Hey guys, how you doing? Pete here, and today we're going to be talking about the World Cup qualifying roster for the first window, where we will be playing El Salvador away, Canada at home, and then Honduras away. So you're not going to see my face in this video, guys. I'm still recovering from COVID and still quite a ways off from being 100% again. So I apologize if this video doesn't have the same level of pep as some of my other videos, but I did want to, get this video out because I think it's overdue. And, we learned a lot from the summer about our player pool, right? Between Nations League and Gold Cup, we learned a ton. Now, as far as the size of the rosters go, we don't know exactly how big the full roster is going to be. The way it works is, according to CONCACAF, they can name big rosters for the window of 3 games, right? And then 24 hours before each game, Berhalter will name 23 players for that match day. So what we're going to do is, for the sake of this video, we're going to basically put 28 guys per roster. And this video is going to be a little different than some of the videos that I did with rosters. So instead of just what I think, should happen, I'm going to put Gregg's options and then my options. So what I think Gregg will do, followed by what I would do, because they are at least a little bit different. So let's dig into it, guys. Thanks for watching. Goalkeepers. Starting with goalkeepers and Gregg's 3 goalkeepers. It really isn't much of a debate, to be honest. It's Zach Steffen, Ethan Horvath, and Matt Turner. Now, what's interesting about the goalkeeper situation to me is that I still think that Gregg Berhalter sees Steffen as his number 1. I think he's still the incumbent, despite being quite shaky for both club and country last season. Hopefully he's over that now. But I think that Horvath and Turner are both there with strong claims. Matt Turner being very strong at the Gold Cup, and Ethan Horvath being very strong in the Nations League. There's pros and cons for each and every one of these keepers. I don't know. I would probably start Ethan Horvath, to be honest, if I was in charge. But these are Gregg's goalkeepers, and I would actually be okay with any of these 3 starting in any of the games. So yeah, my goalkeepers are exactly the same as Gregg's. David Ochoa was the only other guy, but, we don't know if it's finalized that he's moving to Mexico. But I doubt very much he makes it into this roster ahead of one of these 3, even if he hasn't finalized that. Predicting Gregg is hard, though. We don't know what, Gregg is going to do a lot of the time. We can predict some things, but, Gregg is still capable of surprising us in both positive ways and also not so positive ways. So those are the goalkeepers, guys. Again, I'm fine with any of these 3 starting, honestly. I think they all have good, strong records so far. Steffen will probably start if I know Gregg Berhalter. He seems to like him. He played with him at the Crew. He trusts him. But it's not such a secure spot as it used to be. Steffen didn't have competition before this summer. And Horvath and Turner have now stepped up. So that's what you want, right? You want pressure on your number 1. If he's not performing, if he, makes mistakes either in training or in the game, he can be benched, and one of these 2 can take his place, and maybe we'll see that. I guess time will tell. All right, so let's get into fullbacks right now. These are the fullbacks that I think Gregg brings. DeAndre Yedlin, Sergino Dest, Anthony Robinson, Reggie Cannon, and Sam Vines. So this is basically, a lot of these guys are guys that Berhalter trusts. Cannon, Dest, and Robinson for sure. You could maybe make an argument that Shaquille Moore might get the spot over DeAndre Yedlin, or possibly that a guy like George Bello instead of DeAndre Yedlin, but I don't know. Considering that Dest can play left back, I don't think he brings more than, Robinson and Vines. It would be between Vines and Bello, if I'm being honest, and I'm guessing that because he trusted Vines more at the Gold Cup, he might take Vines. Which just really a wait and see. There's a small possibility that he might not bring Vines just to let him settle into his new club and bring Bello instead, or not. But if I had to put money on it, this is still the 5 fullbacks that I think Gregg brings. Some people might ask, why not Shaquille Moore? Guys, Shaquille Moore was very good against Haiti in the opening game, but he was up and down his performances after that. And DeAndre Yedlin was very good in the Nations League. Also wasn't perfect. But, Yedlin has a lot of experience and is still playing at a high level. And while I don't think he's going to start, I do think if you bring 5 fullbacks, he is going to bring him over a guy like Shaquille Moore. My fullbacks are just a little bit different. So Cannon, Yedlin, Dest, and Robinson are all the same. But I would bring Jonathan Gomez. And the reason I would do that, guys, in fact, I want to start off by recommending a podcast episode, the Scuffed podcast, which most of you probably know. They interviewed Herculez Gomez this last week. You can go find it. And it is basically talking about dual nationals, particularly Mexican-American dual nationals, and why the United States has not been good at recruiting Mexican Americans, and why we haven't gotten any Mexican Americans really to commit to the U.S. You know, we lost Jonathan Gonzalez a while ago. For Alvarez we lost, and looks like we've lost David Ochoa as well. And, you know, a guy like Julian Araujo was very hesitant to commit to come to play for the U.S. So, but the conversation was very interesting because Herc Gomez basically says in that interview that the U.S. can't really compete with Mexico in terms of what they have to offer. And by that, he talks about the pool of the families, right? Coming from Mexican families who are very patriotic, who love their country, who, you know, came to the U.S. to have a better life, but still have deep, strong, natural ties to Mexico. And that pool of family is very hard for kids to ignore. On top of that, you know, being treated like a king. You know, you're a god in Mexico if you play for the national team everywhere you go, right? Whereas in the U.S., it's not quite like that. So there's just a greater, focus there on them. And the third thing that Herc Gomez said, which I thought was quite interesting, is that, you know, the Mexican Federation and Tata Martino are making promises to these kids that the U.S. can't compete with. I mean, he gave the example of Ricardo Pepi, and Pepi was saying that, you know, Tata Martino said he might be, you know, in their Qatar roster. Like, that's a very strong statement to give to a guy like Ricardo Pepi when they have, you know, other strikers. Like, that's, you know, it's a little predatory, to be honest, because I don't know if that's a promise that they can fulfill. But the point is that Mexico is offering a lot. And on top of that, you know, when you look at the U.S. rosters, there's very few Hispanic, you know, players on them, right? Not many at all. And so, you know, we're going to have to do more, in my opinion. This is how I read it. We're going to have to go above and beyond normal recruitment procedure if we want to get these Mexican-American players. Otherwise, guys, all we're going to be doing is developing talent for our biggest rival. That's what we're going to be doing if we don't change our recruitment strategy. Because right now, our recruitment strategy isn't working, okay? Yes, it works with non-Mexican-American players, so Sergino Dest, Yunus Musa, etc., but we haven't been successful at recruiting these guys. And so what we have to do is we have to go above and beyond. That means a guy like Jonathan Gomez, who maybe right now is not somebody we would start or even bring off the bench just yet. Maybe we bring him in and tell him we believe in him, okay? Bring him into the roster, get him involved with the guys. You know, maybe George Bello deserves to be here over Jonathan Gomez or Sam Vines, but I think for the long-term benefit of the program, Jonathan Gomez has a much higher ceiling. And he's already been in training camp with Mexico. So we can say, oh, you know, you're not quite ready yet, so we're not going to bring you in and risk losing him to Mexico, yet another one. Or we can up our game. Because if we want to be competitive in CONCACAF with the Mexican-American players, we're going to have to do things differently than we've already done them. And it is not predatory to bring a guy in and, yes, even cap a guy who you like and who you believe has a long-term future with your program, okay? It's not predatory. People will throw that word predatory around. Predatory is when you cap somebody just to keep them away from your rival and you have no real intention of them being a part of your program, okay? That's predatory. And that may be what Mexico is doing, okay? But it is not predatory to cap somebody before they deserve it if you believe they have a long-term future with your program. So I don't want to see this predatory word thrown around anymore because it's been thrown around at me before when I suggested that we bring in young dual nationals, okay? So in my opinion, we bring in Jonathan Gomez, we wine and dine him, we seduce him, we tell him we want him to be a part of the program, and if he is willing, you know, give him 10 minutes at the end of a game that we're already winning comfortably, right? Seal the deal, okay? We cannot afford to keep losing the best young Mexican-American talent. All right, enough on that. Let's get to center backs now. Gregg's center backs. I think he brings 6 of them. John Brooks, Mark McKenzie, Chris Richards, James Sands, Tim Ream, and Miles Robinson. Yep, this pretty much seems about right to me. The reason why I think he'll bring Tim Ream, which I don't want to see Tim Ream in the roster. I don't think he should be there. The emergence of Richards, McKenzie, and Robinson, who can all play on the left-hand side, means we have more than adequate cover for John Brooks. Ream is a liability at this point, guys. He's been a liability for a while, and maybe at some point we could say we didn't really have enough cover to not bring him in, but now we do. So there's absolutely no excuse. There are a couple of guys that you might be wondering why they're not here. One of them is Matt Miazga. Matt Miazga is still with Chelsea. He hasn't worked out his club situation yet. So, even if in the next week or two he gets a club, I don't think, Gregg is going to call him in. I think he's going to let him stay there. The other thing is that Miazga didn't really feature in Nations League and also turned down being at the Gold Cup. James Sands, I think, did enough at least in, the Gold Cup to get called in. And also James Sands can also play as a 6 if necessary. So he's a good utility guy, But these are the guys that I think that Gregg calls in, these 6. My 6 are slightly different. John Brooks, Mark McKenzie, Chris Richards, Miles Robinson, James Sands, and Matt Miazga. Now, instead of Tim Ream, we didn't have a ton of options, right? There was either Matt Miazga or Walker Zimmerman. Now, personally, I probably would have brought Walker Zimmerman, but he's still injured, hasn't come back yet, so I think it's unlikely he gets called up. In this case, I don't mind Matt Miazga being involved with this roster as a 5th or 6th center back, maybe for some experience, and sort of maybe a last shout for him to try to earn a spot in the team, because he has a lot to prove still. So I would bring Matt Miazga just because Walker Zimmerman and Aaron Long are injured, and because we don't know the situation with Owen Otasowie, who, by the way, is another potential. I think long-term Otasowie can play both the 6 and as a center back. All right, now midfielders, guys, and this is genuinely the midfield I think that Gregg brings. Yunus Musa is injured still. We don't know if he's going to be back in time, but if he is, it might be too close, and if it is very close, I don't think Gregg calls him in, which is probably the right call, right? You don't want to bring in a guy who's not quite 100% yet. Tyler Adams, obviously the, ipso facto number 6, Weston McKennie, Julian Green, Jackson Ewell, Sebastian Lletget, and Kellen Acosta. Now, Kellen Acosta has done enough from the Gold Cup to, be Adams' backup at the 6. My question with Kellen is, yes, he's earned his way out of the too many caps category, but the question is, will he continue that form, right? In the past, we've seen Acosta be very inconsistent. And so will he continue the form we saw in the Gold Cup, or will he revert to his inconsistency? The thing that we have to remember, guys, is that most all players can play above their level for a short period of time, right? A combination of form and confidence and a system that allows them to play a certain way can elevate their performance above the actual level that they're at. It's like the old saying, form is temporary, class is permanent. Sooner or later, they often regress to the mean. And I think that may or may not be the case with Kellen Acosta. It's sort of a wait-and-see game, but it's up to him, right? James Sands may challenge for that role. For now, it's Acosta's. He's done enough to earn it. Let's see how he does going forward. Jackson Ewell. Jackson Ewell is a guy who a lot of people are wondering, you really think Gregg will bring him? Yeah, he may not. He may not. It's been 3 tournaments in a row where Jackson Ewell has been just horrific on both sides of the ball, and I wouldn't bring him. But and maybe Gregg has seen enough, but Gregg trusts his guys. We've seen that from him, and he's very, very slow to change his mind. Even after the Haiti game where he was so bad, he still brought Jackson Ewell on for substitute appearances twice more. So when you're talking about 28-man roster, I actually think Gregg brings Jackson, and that's something we can discuss if and when it happens. But yeah, he should have no place here. Sebastian Lletget has earned his way onto the too many caps, guys. He was not good in either the Nations League or the Gold Cup, and I know not everybody agrees with me on that, but I've said my piece on Lletget many, many times. Well documented. I'm not going to continue to discuss it. Julian Green. I really hope he gets a cap, and I think Gregg Berhalter will call him up, sort of as a Yunus Musa replacement. I think he deserves it. He wanted him at the Gold Cup. and he was, at the end of the day, Gregg wouldn't put his foot down with the club, which I disagreed with, but that's Gregg's call. So I hope, and I genuinely think Gregg will call Julian Green in. I think he deserves another shot. It's been a while since he's been with the national team, and he's been really good for club, now playing in the Bundesliga. So good on him. These are the 6 that I think Gregg brings. I still think these 6 lack real creativity. Julian Green is the only guy in this roster who, or in this midfield 6 at least, who I think offers a lot going forward and in terms of creativity and creating chances. My midfielders are similar but also different. As you can see, I have Giovanni Reyna there. 18 years old, now playing for Dortmund centrally. I've been asking for him to play centrally for almost a year now, and now that Dortmund apparently agrees with me, I'm hoping that Gregg will agree with me, although I don't think he will. I think he would rather shoehorn Sebastian Lletget into that midfield than let Giovanni Reyna play there. If you didn't watch the game against Wiesbaden, do it, because Reyna was probably the best attacker on the field in that game, in my opinion, and was responsible for almost everything that Dortmund created. And if he's good enough to play centrally for Dortmund, he's certainly good enough to play centrally for us. One argument that people like to make against Reyna playing in the middle is that he can't defend. First of all, I don't know what games they watch, but that is not true. There is more to defending, first of all, guys, than sprinting back into your own box and making slide tackles. Okay, if that's what you think defending is from a midfielder's perspective, it's just not. Okay, there's a lot of aspects to defending, whether it's pressing, closing down passing lanes, winning your 1v1 duels in midfield. All of those things Giovanni Reyna does very well. And in both the Nations League and in his latest game for Dortmund, we saw him doing a lot of the other side of the defending work, the sprinting back and winning the ball and sparking counterattacks. Furthermore, we act like the job of an attacking midfielder should primarily be defending. Okay, it's not. If you have Tyler Adams and Weston McKennie behind you, you can get away with a guy who is maybe 80 or 90% with his defending, okay, because of what he brings on the ball. Everything's balance. Maybe Gio Reyna is not Tyler Adams with his defending. You shouldn't be asking your attacking midfielder to do that in the first place. And second of all, what he brings going forward is so valuable that you give him a little leeway there, okay? In fact, I'm going to go as far as saying we will not reach our full potential with this group of players until we see Giovanni Reyna playing as an 8/10, okay? Whether that means we have to change the formation to a 4-2-3-1 or a 3-5-2 or whatever you want to call it, that's going to really reach our full potential when we finally admit to playing him there. Luca De La Torre is a guy that I don't think Gregg will bring just because he turned down the Gold Cup. I would still bring him because I think he's one of those guys that can offer us a lot in midfield, and people might look at this group of players and say, well, there's not enough defense. Yes, there is. Weston McKennie, Tyler Adams, and Kellen Acosta are all defensive-minded in some ways. Maybe McKennie a little less than the other two, but also don't forget James Sands can play as a 6 if we need him to. My 7th midfielder is Caden Clark. Should have been in the Gold Cup, was very unlucky to get, a appendectomy about 2 weeks before the tournament, but is fully recovered now and playing for New York Red Bulls, and I think it's time to bring him in. It's long overdue, in my opinion. He should have been there since the Olympic qualifying, but we're a little slow to recognize the value of creative attacking players, and time to bring him in and get him involved with the team, get him used to the system and the setup, and get him meshing with the players and the group, because, guys, Caden Clark is going to be in Qatar. Now let's go into forwards. Christian Pulisic, Josh Sargent, Gio Reyna, Tim Weah, Brendan Aronson, Jordan Sibachu, Gyasi Zardes, and Matthew Hobby. I think those are the 8 forwards that Gregg brings. Most of them are pretty self-explanatory. Gio Reyna he sees as a forward, a wide forward, so that's why I have him in this category for Gregg's guys. There's not a lot to really discuss here. These are very obvious picks, most of them. I think the 2 disputed ones are Gyasi Zardes and Jordan Sibachu. Why not Daryl Dike? I don't think Daryl Dike did enough in the Gold Cup to convince Gregg, and he likes Gyasi Zardes. To Zardes' credit, he wasn't terrible in the Gold Cup, right? He was okay. He was himself, right? He's going to work hard. You give him time and space, he's going to finish chances. Every now and then, he'll even pull something out of his hat that you didn't know he had. But generally speaking, Gyasi Zardes is the same guy he's been for the last 4 or 5 years. But I do think Gregg brings him. And Jordan Siebatcheu scoring goals in Switzerland. I don't think Jordan is really a guy that's going to be with us long term, guys. I think at 26 years old, he's sort of in his peak now. Still playing in the Swiss league, not very mobile, technically not great. Hasn't performed well for the U.S. when called upon, apart from the one header against Honduras. So I don't think he's going to be with us long term, but I do think that Gregg brings him into this roster. My forwards, a little different here. Christian Pulisic, Josh Sargent, Conrad De La Fuente, Tim Weah, Brendan Aronson, Nicolas Giacchini, and Matthew Hoppe. So no Zardes for me, no PFOC for me. I would bring Giacchini. Instead, I think that Giacchini has not played enough as a forward for the U.S. He's, in the Gold Cup, like Matthew Hoppe. He was asked to play out of position, and he did his best, and was oftentimes still effective. But his best position is as a center forward, and as soon as FC Cannes realizes that, I think they'll get more out of him. Okay, Conrad De La Fuente has started the season really strong for Olympique Marseille. A lot of people didn't think he should be with the national team before because he wasn't, quote unquote, playing at a high enough level. But guys, quality is quality, right? You could tell that Conrad had quality long before he moved to Marseille, and I would have him on my roster. Aronson and Weah, I'm a little concerned about Weah's situation with Lille. He doesn't look like he's progressed that much in the last year. Still a bench super sub guy, but I still think he offers something to this group. And then Matthew Hoppe, who, by the way, we need to see as a forward, guys. He's not a winger. He is a center forward. Even Christian Pulisic said that in a recent interview. We still don't have a clear forward. We're going to see how Josh Sargent does at Norwich and for the national team. But nobody in this summer has really staked their claim and said, I am the center forward for this team. And I think we never got to see Hoppe do that because of Gregg's terrible, terrible roster construction with not bringing enough wide players. Okay, so we didn't get to see Hoppe as a center forward. I would like to see him as a center forward, and I think he can bring a lot to that position. Maybe not a classic hold-up center forward, but I still think offers other aspects of his game with his dribbling 1v1, his technique, his off-ball movement, his finishing, his very aggressive mentality, sort of a lot like Clint Dempsey, is who people have compared him to. So this is my roster, guys. A little different from Gregg's. I hope this was a help to you. We're very similar. We probably agree on about maybe 23 or 24 of the 28, but there are going to be some differences there, and we'll see what Gregg does. Like I said, Gregg may surprise us. He often does. And in a good way or a bad way, we will see. But tell me what you think, guys, in the comments below. Tell me who you want to see, who you think should be on this roster, and I will hopefully be a lot better on Sunday for a live stream. I'm sorry I didn't get to do one this last Sunday, guys. I had a high fever. Hopefully by this Sunday I'll be a lot better. Thanks for watching, guys. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll talk to you soon.